In this second part of the video, we will go through some more points on personal hygiene, food hygiene and safety, food temperatures, and the last few things from the tour around the kitchen, which wasn't covered in part 1. We will also talk about what to do in the case of incidents, a few points on fire safety, and finally some more information which is specific for servers during courses. Cover scratches and wounds with clean, water-resistant bandages and disposable gloves. This is to protect your wound as well as to prevent contamination of the food. Disposable gloves should always be changed as often as you would otherwise have washed your hands. If you need to cough or sneeze, do so in the bend of your arm. Always eat or drink far away from food which can otherwise be contaminated, which means eating is done outside the kitchen. Take off your watch and all jewelries. If you have to wear your wedding ring, please use disposable gloves. Don't use strong-scented perfume or aftershave. Keep your nails short and clean, and don't use nail polish. Don't lick your fingers while serving in the kitchen. Direct contact with the food served to the students should be as little as possible. Report all illnesses with symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, coughing, sore throat, cold, wounds, stomach problems, or skin and throat infections. Take showers and change your personal clothes regularly. There are clothes that can be borrowed, and the servers can use the laundry machines in the laundry house. Change your aprons and kitchen coats whenever they are dirty. Make sure that the food is protected from contamination during the entire handling. Prepare and store raw food and cooked food separately. In the kitchen fridge, the upper half is for raw food only, and bottom half is for cooked food only. Use different equipment for raw food and cooked food, or wash them thoroughly between each use. Close all containers and bags thoroughly, and use only containers made for food storage, such as those made of hard plastic, stainless steel, and glass. Cover the food during preparation as much as possible. Never put uncovered food in the fridge, and never leave any food uncovered when no one is around. It should be fly-proof and mouse-proof. Never put unpackaged food directly into the big blue containers. Wipe clean the blue containers when they are empty. Make sure that all plastics around vegetables and fruit, for example bananas and cucumbers, are opened up to prevent condensation. Otherwise, they will get ruined. Follow the instructions and recipes. Many of our instructions and routines come from rules and legislation regarding food safety. You are welcome to give suggestions, but the changes have to go through the kitchen committee. When there are many different people serving, it creates confusion when routines are not followed. Plus, there is a risk that allergen ingredients are added to the food when the menu is not followed. Don't throw away any equipment without contacting the kitchen committee, even if you are sure it is broken. Also, don't make any irreversible changes like drilling or sawing into the equipment. Do not rearrange the furniture, alter the labels indicating where items should be placed, or adjust the advanced settings of the machines without prior approval from the kitchen committee. To freeze food in the blast chiller, put it in flat bags. Never freeze food in big blocks. Maximum 1 liter in each bag, and put the bags on grids. If it is frozen, also write how many days it was in the fridge before being frozen. If, for example, it was in the fridge for 2 days before being frozen, it can only stay 3 more days in the fridge after being defrosted. When defrosting food, it cannot stay in room temperature for more than 2 hours, even if it is frozen. This means that either you have to defrost it in the fridge, in a bowl so that the condensation water is collected, or it has to reach 60 degrees in 2 hours, which is only possible in the oven or in the microwave oven. Don't mix leftovers with fresh food. Leftovers should primarily be consumed by the servers. If there are more leftovers than can possibly be consumed by the servers, it is a good routine to either freeze or to serve those leftovers to the students already the day after to prevent leftovers from several days to be collected in the kitchen fridge. Always put out the leftovers sign when serving leftovers to the students. The cold chain may never be broken. This means that items which should be stored at maximum 8 degrees should never go above 8 degrees, and items which should be stored at minus 18 degrees should never go above minus 18 degrees. If you have to buy groceries, read the manual for shopping with the center car in the catering manager's binder in the office. Use a cooling bag with ice packs and immediately put the food in fridges and freezers upon arrival at the center. The cooling bag is in the car and the ice packs are in the freezer in the storage cabin. Hot food should never be placed directly in the fridge, as the temperature is then raised in all the items in the fridge and the cold chain is broken, resulting in faster, unsafe bacterial growth. Keep an eye out for fridges and freezers being too hot or too cold. The temperatures can be adjusted and sometimes it's necessary to reorganize the food for better air circulation. Make it a routine to check fridge and freezer temperatures every time you open them. By the door to the bathroom, we hang wet laundry. When dry, put it in the laundry box to be washed after the course or when needed. Don't put anything wet in the laundry box. There is an iPad in the kitchen which can be used to communicate with the kitchen committee and the person in charge of ordering food for the course. Ask the center manager who this person is. If you, for example, need to add something to the second delivery, which comes on Tuesday during the course, you can communicate this on the iPad. You can also find a form for feedback to fill in towards the end of the course. Remember to use the dining hall manuals with pictures when setting up the dining hall. If the dining halls are set according to the pictures, the flow during the meals runs smoothly. Washing machines are found in the new laundry house and can be used by the servers. The female servers access the laundry house by crossing the beginning of the male walking path next to the AT apartments. Make sure there are no male students around when going to and from the laundry house. There is a defibrillator on the wall beside the entrance to the main building for use if someone suffers a cardiac arrest. In the case of incidents such as broken glass in the kitchen, food poisoning, too high temperatures in the fridge, encountered mice or other vermin, or an accident where one of the servers gets or almost gets hurt, always notify the center manager and write an incident report which can be found in the kitchen manager's binder. Put the form in the binder filled in forms. It's better to fill out too many than too few incident reports. These are an important basis for the improvement of safety in the kitchen. If mice are detected in the kitchen, tell the female supporting course manager, as she is in charge of putting out mouse traps. An incident report should be written when mice have been detected in the kitchen or dining halls. Fire in the kitchen is easily avoided with common sense and by taking certain simple precautions. Never leave food boiling unattended on the stove. Heat oil maximum 1 minute on maximum heat setting 7 on the induction hob. 10 is only for rapidly boiling water or the like. Always turn the handles of the pots inwards to avoid the risk of someone passing by pulling them down on the floor. Keep inflammable and easily ignited things on at least 1 meter's distance from the stove. Turn the stove off when you're done cooking on it. Clean the stove from grease regularly, since a larger spot of grease can ignite. If, however, a fire breaks out, it's important to handle it correctly and to avoid spreading the fire and causing more damage. If a pot of food ignites, put on a mitten and carefully cover the pot with a lid to choke the fire. Alternatively, use a fire blanket, which can be found on the wall next to the big paper roll or on the wall next to the window. The fire blanket is taken out from its cover by pulling the strap. Then turn the stove off. Never ever use water to extinguish the fire. If the cause of the fire is grease, water will cause the grease to violently splash, which increases and spreads the fire. If there is a fire in an oven or a microwave oven, just close the door and turn off the heat. The fire will then quickly be quenched. There is a CO2 fire extinguisher in the kitchen, and one foam extinguisher in the hall outside the kitchen. Both are appropriate for extinguishing fires caused by grease and electricity. Pull the pin at the top of the extinguisher and then squeeze a handle to start spraying. It is important to spray into the base of the fire and not directly into the flames. All servers should study the emergency exit plans placed in the buildings and memorize the emergency exits, especially the exits in the main building and where you are living. In the service dining hall there is a fire ladder from the window on the south wall. And in the kitchen, the emergency exit is out the window onto the roof of the annex, and then there's a fire ladder from this roof to the ground. If you are not comfortable with using a ladder as an emergency exit, please talk to the management. In case of a fire alarm, all the servers should gather by the green meeting point sign in front of the main building. The female students gather in front of the female house, and the male students gather in front of the male house. In case of a fire, call 112. There is a telephone in the kitchen and at the entrance of the female accommodation house. On every course, there should be one server with a basic understanding of the sewage system. There are 2 alarms to the sewage system fixed to the main building on the female side. One is a blinking light and the other one makes a sound. If the sound alarm goes off, it's very important to contact this server at once. If you don't know who this person is, contact the center manager. To serve can be demanding in many ways, and it is important to take care of oneself. Take care of yourself first, only then can you serve others. It is important that a server who feels tired and worn out meditates or rests more. Always rest between 1 and 2:30 p.m., even if you're not tired and there are things left to do. Also, after the service metta in the evening, try not to go back to the kitchen to work, but go to bed. If you need to take more rest, please talk to the kitchen manager. Remember to drink a lot of fluid. The assistant teacher is always available for support. If you want, the course managers can arrange a private meeting. You may also ask questions after the service metta in the evening. Enjoy your service, be kind to yourself and your co-servers, and be happy.